Hello everybody, I hope you're all well. I know, this is the first time I've filmed in my new flat on this channel. Usually I film in the studio, but I was trying to save some time today, so I trekked all my camera equipment home to film in my bedroom. God, I'm sat on the floor as well. I feel like I'm about to film a chubby bunny challenge. I don't know about anyone else, but my Twitter and TikTok feed has been inundated with Republican makeup memes. Republican makeup is defined by a mismatched foundation shade, harshly drawn on eyebrows, unblended black eyeliner, which is always underneath but not in the waterline, and a peachy nude lip with no lip liner. Yes, the lefties finally got their lick back after years and years of blue-haired feminist jokes. And the Republicans are having a meltdown about it. But on a slightly less light note, we are living in really scary times. Far-right sentiment, ideology, fascism is cropping up all around the world. Something I've noticed a lot is British people trying to separate themselves from the chaos that was the American election by being sort of like, take a load of this guy, and acting like the clearly far worse candidate winning is a strictly American issue. And I would just like to draw everyone's attention to the 2019 general election. Yeah, okay, thank you. And Reform UK is gaining a concerning amount of support in this country. Essentially, the rise of the right is not just an American issue, it's a worldwide one. And the Republican makeup meme sort of triggered a thought within me where, what if the media we consume, the pop culture, the fashion, the beauty trends, lifestyle content has been signaling this rise of conservatism for the past few years? Now, I know I am not the first person to make a video about this. My friend Madison made a video about the rise of conservatism within Gen Z. Amanda Marie Anna made a fantastic video about why Republican women look like that. And only a few days ago, Matt Bernstein made a video about conservatism within pop culture. All of these videos will be linked down below, but I wanted to come from a slightly different angle. And this ended up turning into a little more of a personal essay about conservative lifestyles and our relationship with consumerism, and essentially how consumerism has acted as a distraction this entire time. And I essentially use conservatism within a couple of internet trends and beauty and fashion trends almost as a jumping off point. So if you're looking for a deep dive into every conservative signal within pop culture, this is not the video for you. Definitely check out the other videos I've mentioned, but something that I've noticed whilst researching and writing this video is that these beauty and fashion trends, which I'm going to speak about, are always so much more than just surface level material trends. They more often than not pedestal a very aspirational lifestyle, and that's what I want to focus on. And this lifestyle happens to be a conservative one. I think the general glorification of conservative lifestyles reminds me a lot of this article that I read recently by Katie Rosinski for The Independent, Why Being Boring is the New Status Symbol. And I really want to get into how not only this very conservative way of living has infiltrated Gen Z, but how it is actively pedestaled, glorified, and romanticized. Instead of covering every way in which conservatism is being signaled in pop culture, because that's already been done before, I wanted to use a couple of beauty and fashion trends and really dive into them and essentially use them as a jumping off point to then talk about conservative lifestyles and also consumerism. As you guys can probably tell, I'm really excited to get into it, but just before we do, I would love to thank June's Journey for sponsoring today's video. If you know me, if you've been here for a while, you know how much I mess with mobile games. I mess with them heavy. The reason why I love mobile games so much is I am trying to cut down my social media usage and scrolling, but like most people, I have to use my phone for work, and I essentially love finding apps that will sort of take up my scrolling time which aren't social media based. And I found that having mobile games on my phone, I've spoken to you guys about the mobile games that I use, really helps reduce my social media scrolling. June's Journey is a hidden object mystery game with a very, very gripping detective story. Yeah. As you guys can imagine, it's very engaging because of this storyline element. I was hooked from the beginning, and it all takes place in the 1920s. Very immersive. Beat it, toots. In June's Journey, you play as Detective June Parker, who is the girl boss to beat all girl bosses, as she attempts to solve the murder of her sister and her brother-in-law and uncovers family secrets and gets herself into all sorts of rigmarole along the way. One of my favorite things about June's Journey is the story. Not only does this story element really help keep me engaged and entertained at all times, but they really cover all the bases. It's literally like an episode of EastEnders. There's family relationships, motherhood, love, betrayal, all while solving different crimes and mysteries. The story is constantly evolving and new chapters are launched every week, meaning there is always something new to play every single day. As you progress through hidden object scenes, you will learn more about the case. So just to give you guys a little sneak peek of the game, here's 3 clues and let's see if you guys can connect the dots together. Clue number 1 is a gift box with a bullet was found amongst Harry's belongings. Clue number 2 is on the day of the murder, Harry had a meeting with someone called Eddie. And number 3, there was a front page article in a local newspaper about the rise of mob violence. Now, I will be revealing what this all means at the end of the video, so make sure you stick around. To download June's Journey, make sure you click the link in the description. Please, I need to talk about this with someone and my housemate is sick of me banging on about it. Thank you so much, June's Journey, for sponsoring today's video, and let's get into it. Flair magazine defines quiet luxury as a form of high-end fashion that speaks volumes through its understated elegance, careful craftsmanship, and attention to detail. Quiet luxury is all about quality over quantity, focusing on creating timeless pieces that will never go out of style. It is soft and tactile, beige and grey, and, as Vogue describes it, it's less austere than minimalism, but more polished than normcore. None of those words were in the Bible. In essence, quiet luxury is logoless designer of the highest quality from if you know brands. These pieces tend to fall into maybe core and elevated basics category. They tend to be pretty timeless, and they also act as a secret language between wealthy people. An average Joe would look at this cap that Kendall Roy is wearing and think it's just a run-of-the-mill navy cap, but someone of Kendall's class would know that that cap costs $600. I think a scene which encapsulates quiet luxury and old money versus new money so perfectly is another scene from Succession, and it's a scene when Greg's girlfriend wears a very visibly designer bag to Logan's birthday party.
Because she's brought a ludicrously capacious bag.
What?
What's even in there? Huh? Flat shoes for the subway? Her lunch pail?
There's a very notable difference between the way that we think wealthy people dress versus the way that they actually dress. And this interlinks a lot with old money versus new money. A couple of years ago, it was really interesting to witness essentially a wave of pro-old money sentiment on social media, whether it was TikTok compilations, Twitter threads, Instagram fashion inspiration. People everywhere were loudly proclaiming about how old money, and particularly the old money aesthetic, was superior to new money. Now, I don't think this is any surprise because I think that modern architecture is objectively really ugly and we have been inundated with it. But I do find this romanticization of old money and the lifestyle that comes with it absolutely fascinating because it's almost an oxymoron, right? People were romanticizing a lifestyle which they would never be able to have because it's in the name, old money. And just a quick side note, I think that is absolutely a reason why I saw old money being glorified by mostly Americans. Number 1, the old money aesthetic is very far removed from the average American's lifestyle and living situation. Now, frolicking in manners and owning land isn't part of the average British person's lifestyle either, but if you grew up in the UK, you have a much closer proximity to the countryside and you probably spent a little bit of time in the countryside, which seems to be very adjacent to the old money aesthetic. But it's not just this. The main reason is that in the UK, there is a very clear-cut class system, and classism is very deeply embedded in our society. British people will always be classist first. And this is not just reserved for the wealthy. Some of the most classist people you will ever meet in your life in this country are middle class. The swaying of middle class voters lies solely on the crux of convincing them that they have more in common with the rich than the poor. Aspiration is one hell of a drug. But because there is such a clear-cut class system in this country, alongside the fact that there is a very deeply entrenched culture of shame in this country, but that is a different conversation for a different day, there is now actually stigma attached to generational wealth, especially amongst young people. We roll our eyes if we found out that your parents helped buy your first home. I even find myself wincing a little bit when I find out that someone went to private school. And of course, people can't help the family they were born into. They can't help the fact that they went to private school. I know I wouldn't turn down my parents' help with buying my first home. It comes from a place of genuine frustration about how unfair the system is. And in turn, familial and generational wealth is very stigmatized amongst young people, at least the circles that I frequent. Therefore, the old money aesthetic didn't quite pick up the same speed over here because we think wealthy people are assholes. And Americans tend to look up to old money and wealth in a very aspirational way. And of course, there are people like that in the UK. Margaret Thatcher fed the myth of class mobility to our parents. But I think that young British people are far more aware of how the class system works in this country, and that this is a reality that we simply cannot aspire to. And it makes total sense that the old money aesthetic picked up in the US, not just because Americans' proximity to that reality is so far, so it's so much easier for them to romanticize, but the whole foundation of the US was built on the American dream. It's the land of the free, it's the land of opportunity, because the US as a country is really new. It's a colonial state. Because the system is so new, there is no the British dream, because our class system has been up and running for hundreds and hundreds of years. But if we just circle back to quiet luxury, the conservative signals of this trend go far beyond trying to signal generational wealth and how you've made your money, but also I think quiet luxury represents a kind of uniformity and conformity. Mina Lay made a great video about uniforms and personal style. I think that people are craving uniform because of a growing fatigue and the mental space that it takes up trying to choose an outfit every single day. There is a reason why if I find a good outfit, I wear it for 4 days in a row, because it's easy. But also there is some really interesting conservative roots to uniformity and conformity. As I mentioned earlier, Amanda Marie Anna made an absolutely fantastic video about why all Republican women look like that. Because one of the cruxes of conservative ideology is gender essentialism, the role of a man to protect and the woman to homemake, and these are roles which are innate to our gender, as is masculinity and femininity. And Amanda highlights the Republican politicians who have climbed the ranks via getting a MAGA makeover, because there is so much value in looking masculine and especially in looking feminine. There is value and power in conformity, and conservatives are far more likely to conform to a specific look than liberals and leftists, hence the Republican makeup memes. Amanda also discusses in that video how people often signal their political beliefs and leanings via their clothing and their style. She even cites a study where American students correctly guessed what party people voted for based on just their face, and they got it correct 98% of the time. And I also read a great article in The Guardian. This was actually written in 2016, but it still rings true. Tribe Called Vest: Deconstructing the Uniform of the Young Republican by Ara Madawi. And the reason why it's far easier to spot a Republican than a Democrat is because there is a lot more variation in the way that liberals dress. No surprise there. YouGov analyzed survey responses collected from a panel of more than 200,000 Americans and found that millennials who identify as Democrats are more interested in fashion and are more diverse in their dress sense than their Republican counterparts. They also spend more money on clothes and have bought more categories of clothing recently than millennial Republicans. Further, young Democrats are more likely to say they follow the latest trends and fashion, while young Republicans are more likely to say they tend to stick to classic items that are timeless rather than go for whatever is in fashion. Meaning, despite the whole blue-haired feminist stereotype which has followed liberals and leftists around since what feels like the dawn of time, it's actually far easier to spot a Republican than a Democrat. And bearing in mind, this article was written nearly 10 years ago. But if we try to relate this back to the old money aesthetic, to quote Ara Madawi for The Guardian again, so what timeless classics are hanging in conservative closets? According to their data, it's an unsurprising cast, including Brooke Brothers, LL Bean, Clarks, Ralph Lauren, Tory Burch, and Hermes. They're also more likely to buy from budget labels such as Wet Seal and Walmart brand Faded Glory. And it makes so much sense that there is so much value held in conforming in conservative circles, because that's what conservatism it's all about. It's about conserving something. It's about not changing. It's about not evolving. It's about maintaining the status quo. It's not just about uniformity. It's about conformity. It's about stripping any sort of individuality from people. And it's not just about uniformity in appearance. It's about uniformity in lifestyle. The idea that everyone in society should be part of a nuclear family, that it's a woman's innate role to rear children and homemake. And I was actually talking about this with my housemate, and he brought up a really good point where he said this is the exact reason why conservative art is bad. It can be quite difficult talking about conservative signaling within beauty and fashion trends, because I don't want to imply that if you like wearing Ralph Lauren that you're secretly a Tory, but I will question it now, kidding. Or that if you like investing in high quality timeless pieces that you're trying to signal to people that you're a conservative. We are going to dig our teeth a little more into this point in the last segment of this video, but the reason to me why it feels that old money was really signaling a conservative comeback is because, like most TikTok cores and aesthetics, they're selling so much more than just fashion. They're selling a lifestyle. And the old money lifestyle is obviously a very conservative one. Old money is particularly conservative because old money does not let in outsiders, which, as I said earlier, it does make the trend feel like deeply ironic. But yes, as I mentioned, we are going to be talking more about the lifestyle of it all in the last segment of this video. But firstly, I want to talk about the clean girl aesthetic. The physical attributes of the clean girl are natural but dewy makeup, perfectly slicked back hair, wearing some kind of upmarket or trendy athleisure, and usually having a green juice in hand. Now, whether the pervasiveness of the clean girl aesthetic was signaling a rise of conservatism, it can be up for debate. Sure, the clean girl aesthetic is a far more conservative way of doing your makeup than 2016 glam, but it could just represent the natural pendulum swing of trends, right? Especially because the clean girl aesthetic seems to be the opposite of Republican makeup and the MAGA makeover, but I am here to perhaps disagree. Firstly, the rise of the clean girl aesthetic coincided or even triggered off with filler and noticeable plastic surgery going out of fashion. Noticeable being the key word here. Not only do I feel like pedestaling natural beauty feels a little bit, especially when these celebrities who are loudly proclaiming that they've had all of their filler dissolved are still getting beauty treatments aplenty. We just don't know about it. But as I've spoken about so many times on this channel, the clean girl aesthetic and this pedestaling of natural beauty is actually a wealth signifier, because you can either be one of the very few people who was born naturally beautiful, or you can be one of the very few people who can buy it. I'll link down below some of the videos I've made about beauty being a wealth signifier if you want to know more. But before we get into the lifestyle of it all, I want to touch on the politics of cleanliness. This is an incredibly hefty subject, hence why I'm really only scraping the surface. I could make an entire video about this, to be honest, if this is something that you guys would be interested in, but there is a long history of marginalized groups being discriminated against based on their supposed lack of cleanliness, which really means anything which doesn't fit into the white, middle and upper class Protestant lifestyle is considered unclean. Hair that isn't straight Caucasian hair, food that is seasoned, body hair. So you can't really blame people of color for feeling a little bit iffy about this new it girl aesthetic, which orbits cleanliness and is fronted by mostly white women. But if we just try and tie the clean girl aesthetic in with conservatism, I can imagine that if you consume this kind of content, it would make you want to conform to a very particular standard of beauty, of being feminine, but small, but natural. But it also makes total sense that an awareness of cleanliness is actually driven by your political leanings. I mean, consider the role that evangelical Christianity plays within the Republican Party. Now consider purity culture within that religion. Consider how Republicans label any kind of sex which takes place out of heterosexual marriage or procreation as impure. These are all very natural stepping stones. Also, consider how much the word dirt is used in politics. People often say that politicians are playing dirty. Now, what if I told you the more aware you are of cleanliness, the more likely you are to be politically conservative? I'm going to cite a study conducted by Eric Helzer and David Pizarro. To quote, "Cleanliness is next to conservatism," by Association for Psychological Science. In the first experiment, participants were asked to complete a questionnaire on their political attitudes. To do so, they had to either step over to a hand sanitizer dispenser placed at one end of a hallway or walk down an empty hallway. Results showed that people who were exposed to reminders of cleanliness, the hand sanitizer dispenser, reported a less liberal and more conservative political orientation than people who had received no such reminders. In the second experiment, before being asked to rate their moral approval of various behaviors, some volunteers were exposed to a sign that promoted the use of hand wipes to help keep the lab space clean. Those who were reminded of physical purity rendered harsher judgments of sexual acts than the control group. Helzer and Pizarro note that these findings, when combined with previous research, suggest a two-way link between conservatism and concerns for moral purity. The researchers surmised that political orientation, identifying as more conservative or more liberal, may be shaped, at least in part, by the strength of a person's motivation to avoid physical contamination. People who try to avoid such contamination are more likely to be vigilant in seeking out threats to purity, which ultimately reinforces a politically conservative worldview. But what ties these beauty and fashion trends together, quiet luxury, the old money aesthetic, the clean girl aesthetic, is that they go so much deeper than just surface level beauty and fashion trends. These trends and aesthetics are selling you a lifestyle. And this happens to be a pretty conservative one. And this promise of happiness and fulfillment drives what? It drives what? It drives consumerism. So let's get into that. It is absolutely no surprise to me that these TikTok cores and aesthetics fell down the hole of conservatism and living a conservative lifestyle, because these aesthetics and cores have always been selling us a lifestyle, conservative or not. Because what drives consumption more than the desire to own something, the desire to wear this cute little top, the desire to own a lip gloss shade that you like, is the promise that if you own these things, that you will be happier and you will be more fulfilled. And I think this is why, especially a few years ago, these cores and aesthetics were really picking up some speed, because people were really deeply connecting with the possibility of a fulfilled life. I feel like this is like wackadoodle time. I feel like this is wackadoodle time. But this is just like, this is where we get into the more personal essay of it all. And this is just like a lot of thoughts that I've had recently. But think about the cores and aesthetics which have picked up in the last few years. Conservative or not, they've always been inextricably linked with some kind of a lifestyle. The clean girl aesthetic is connected with wellness, exercise, eating healthily, being mindful, having your life together. The old money aesthetic went far beyond just clothes. It was living in a beautiful, over 100-year-old manor. It was playing on your own tennis court. It was hosting luxurious dinner parties, having a beautiful wedding. Cottagecore romanticized a slower lifestyle of living amongst nature and being self-sufficient. And I don't think this is any coincidence that cottagecore really took off during the pandemic, a time when not only were we literally not allowed to go outside, but we were really let down by the government. So this idea of being self-sufficient was really appealing to a lot of people. Corpcore had associations with career stability and seemed to be counterculture against this pressure for everyone to become an entrepreneur or a CEO. And I remember there was this one aesthetic which absolutely like did not take off at all. But I remember there was this thing called the rock star girlfriend aesthetic, which I think this is when everyone was like, okay, can we pack it up now? Like, I'm getting sick of this. But again, this is selling a lifestyle of partying and romance and being on the open road. Even the absurdity of Tomato Girl Summer was selling a life of sun and holidays and good food and relaxation. But why do TikTok cores and aesthetics always contain this lifestyle element? I actually can't think of any core or aesthetic which has been purely just surface level and just about the fashion. Firstly, it seemed for a while that TikTok aesthetics replaced subcultures, because the internet and especially TikTok became the place where young people congregate. And although it's not a physical space, it's still a space nonetheless. But I mostly think that these TikTok aesthetics with these built-in lifestyles really connected with people, because on the whole, especially young people, are very dissatisfied with their own lives. And look, although I do believe that smartphone addiction and the normalization of antisocial behavior, and by antisocial behavior, I mean staying indoors. I don't mean like the fucking new Labour definition of antisocial behavior. I'm not trying to bring back ASBOs. And bed rotting does partly drive this. The real driving factor is that we are a part of a broken system which doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. People are working jobs that they hate to live in apartments which they're never going to own, and are finding themselves having to cut down on things that they actually enjoy, going on nights out, going for dinner and drinks with friends, their hobbies, all for the sake of budgeting. There has been a real violation of the social contract when it comes to young people. We were told that if we work hard and we get a good education, if we live in a double income household, we would be able to live a happy life. And most importantly, we would be able to afford to live a happy life. And because of this capitalist system that we are forced to function in, which puts profits over people, we have maybe become the first generation to be completely shafted by this system. Not only is like pedestaling and trying to partake in some kind of TikTok lifestyle aesthetic a form of escapism, but it's also something to aspire to. And most importantly, it's something pretty realistic to aspire to, because all you need to do is own the stuff. Nothing in the clean girl aesthetic says that you need to own a home or you can't live in a house share. But what the clean girl aesthetic does say is you can achieve this lifestyle, you can achieve this look, you can achieve happiness and fulfillment if you have the same athleisure set as me, which is 80 quid. If you have the same MacBook as me, if you do your makeup in the same way as me, which is a lot more attainable to young people. I mentioned this in my last video, but this is a part of sweet treat culture, which is the phenomenon where frivolous spending on little quote unquote sweet treats like makeup and clothing and maybe technology actually increases during times of economic and political uncertainty. But just to make another personal side note, I've noticed a pattern in my last few video essays where I discuss consumerism as a distraction. And the fact that we probably don't even realize how truly miserable we are because we are in a constant state of distraction. Whether we are distracted by the media we consume, our phones, and also we are constantly distracted by being able to buy so many things with just the click of a button and the little endorphin hits that we get from all of these little things. The reason why I bring this up so much and the reason why I am so passionate about this is because this time last year I wasn't very happy. I wasn't depressed or anything. I was just in a little bit of a funk. And I ended up making this really crazy life change to try and put my happiness first. And it was the complete right decision. It was the scariest thing I've ever done, but it was the complete right decision. I'm really happy now and I feel so lucky that I'm happy. But something that I noticed after I made this life change was how much less stuff I bought. My consumption reduced by a shocking amount. And I just want to make it clear, like, it's not like I'm some anti-consumerist minimalist queen. Can we all just... I love buying little trinkets and bits and bobs. I love buying clothes. But something I noticed was how much less stuff I bought, and the stuff that I buy now, I'm so much more satisfied with my purchases because they're not being driven by boredom and they are not being driven by trying to fill a void in my life. I had an insatiable appetite to consume. I was always thinking about the next thing I wanted to buy, whether it was a piece of clothing, whether it was a part of the apartment that I wanted to do up. Now that I'm living a life where I am a lot happier and I am feeling quite fulfilled at the moment, I still like a little shop, I still like a little retail therapy, but it doesn't feel like the addiction that it once was. But if we try and link this back to conservatism, firstly, the clean girl aesthetic and the lifestyle of the clean girl is inextricably linked with wellness. I've spoken about this on my channel before, but there is a very large overlap between wellness and far-right conspiracy theories. And the reason for this is a lot of wellness circles' bread and butter is questioning authority and using alternative medicines. So it's no wonder that people can jump from questioning their doctor's advice to being an anti-vaxxer. But I want to talk a little bit more about why the clean girl lifestyle is a conservative one. Because the clean girl, it goes far beyond the way that she dresses and the way she does her makeup. Clean girls eat healthily. They regularly work out and have an Instagrammable activewear to match. And they work hard. They hustle. They rise and grind, whether it's at their place of work or they're a student. Within these clean girl collages or day in the life, there is always a silver MacBook with pages and pages of work in there somewhere. And I do just want to make it clear, it's not like I think this lifestyle can't satisfy or fulfill you, but rather it's not the only kind of life that can satisfy and fulfill you. But also this life, it can't exist without consumerism. The clean girl lifestyle is all about making changes to your life. It seems to maximize your workflow, and it seems that a lot of these TikTok aesthetics and cores tend to follow this kind of path. And this is where I think the conservatism really ties into it. It's all about making you as efficient of a worker as possible because you are just a cog in this capitalist machine, which we are not supposed to question because we are constantly in a state of distraction via consumerism. This entire phenomenon reminds me of this article that I read on The Independent by Katie Rasinski, Why Being Boring is the New Status Symbol. I've spoken about this a lot in past videos, but Gen Z are going out and partying less and spending more time alone than any generation before them. There are multiple reasons for this. I highly recommend checking out my video about running clubs if you want to know more. This is partly driven by smartphone addiction and widespread social anxiety, but it's mostly driven by the cost of living crisis and the fact that young people can't really afford to go out, whether that be clubbing or dinner or drinks with friends. But whilst this is going on, more boring lifestyles are being glorified on social media as locking in. The clean girl aesthetic being one example. We are being successfully tricked into thinking that we should all be living a life like this. And I know that this kind of lifestyle makes some people happy. I know. Working also makes me happy. I'm very grateful. I really love my job and being productive makes me feel good. But it shouldn't be the only thing that we're doing. We should be living layered, beautiful lives. We should be spending time together. We should be connecting with each other. But that's being taken away from us. Not only is living our lives solely to maximize our workflow very conservative, but people going out less, it negatively impacts the nightlife industry. But because being boring has become this status symbol, it's like the conformity of it all that really gets under my skin. As I mentioned earlier, conformity and conservatism inextricably linked. That's why there's no good conservative art. I think something I'm concerned about with this sort of more personal video, number one, I'm wearing in case you guys aren't going to like it, even though I did really enjoy writing this. I really enjoyed that this is taking a little bit more of a personal spin. I would usually do this kind of thing as a podcast episode, but I thought, fuck it, stick it on the main channel. But I think something I'm concerned about with this video is I don't want it to come across like I'm shaming people who live slower lifestyles. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I'm a little bit of a party girl, okay? I understand that not everyone likes partying, and that is completely fine, but it's the choice that is being stripped away from young people that's really irking me. And I worry that because we're getting constant endorphin hits from our phones, from the things that we can buy so easily, because we're in a constant state of distraction, we're being hindered from living a life that could actually make us happy. But because we're in a constant state of distraction, what if no one notices it? Less and less people are going to be outraged when bars and nightclubs shut and the government aren't offering any support because they think that they're living a slower lifestyle out of choice. When really, if you go out less because you can't afford it, was it really a choice at all? This took a really strange turn. I have no idea how this video is going to turn out. Again, I don't really know how videos are going to turn out until I watch the edit back. Again, it was like more of a personal essay. I don't really know what my final thoughts are other than don't get lost in the source, which is our phones. And like, I just want to make it clear, bitch, my screen time is 6 hours a day. Like, I am no better than anyone else, but I think I have been having a lot of epiphanies since I made the really big life change that I did last year, and the difference that I noticed in my consumption. And essentially, I just want to spread that message. And I know that it's fucking hard, man. It's so hard. It's so unfair that these fulfilled lives of connecting with people is being stripped from us through the socioeconomic state of the country that we live in. But yeah, no, this feels like a very pessimistic video. This has just been some thoughts that I've been having, and I really hope that you guys enjoyed this. I know it's a bit more of a personal one. This was initially supposed to be like conservative signaling, but I ended up just going down this like rabbit hole of just talking about my thoughts. Yes, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it, and I definitely want to do some more like personal essays, but I think maybe I should just do a Substack instead. What do all of the clues that I was discussing at the beginning of this video mean? Well, Harry was actually connected to Eddie Daggett, who is a known mob enforcer and is now the main suspect. So make sure you guys download June's Journey to continue the investigation. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you soon for my next one. Bye.